Welcome back to Worldview. Now, mainstream national and regional news is hamstrung by advertising and time considerations. Imagine having to cram everything that happens in a news day into 10 stories or less. Local news has been losing budget and attention as news becomes a more immediately consumed commodity. But there's a new investigative news organization and website here in Wales, and Phil Parry, a former BBC journalist, and 2 colleagues head it up. WalesEye.com was launched on the 50th anniversary of the Profumo affair, a case of establishment hypocrisy, and the founders of this website think it's about time to take the establishment on. Now, WalesEye is all about fairness, and almost no subject is off limits. They pose questions, especially about the use of public money, and they want to make sure things make sense. They've already taken on the Welsh Rugby Union, BBC Wales, and the Welsh Government. Now, these are 3 key pillars of the establishment here, which they hope to shake up. Phil's a veteran newscaster, having spent 23 years with the BBC, and before that with many newspapers in Wales and London. He left the BBC in March of 2010, a couple of weeks after he interviewed me for their AM/PM show on US politics. That was all leading up to the rather disastrous midterm elections. Now, while he assures me that interview had nothing to do with his leaving, I was relieved when he agreed to come on this program. Phil Parry, welcome to Worldview.
Thank you very much, Dennis. It's lovely to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. Let's start with a bit of history for our global viewers who may be unaware. Can you briefly explain what the Profumo affair was all about?
Well, the Profumo affair was about a man called Jack Profumo, who was a very senior minister in the Conservative government 50 years ago. He got involved in a call girl scandal, a call girl called Christine Keeler, and he was forced to resign because he lied in Parliament about that issue and because of exposure about his involvement with this call girl. Now, we felt that it was a great time to launch this site to mark the 50th anniversary of that occasion, because it was a fine example of establishment hypocrisy and the way that the establishment would run somebody out of town who didn't behave according to the rules. And we were all about not behaving according to the rules, and we did feel that it was a great time to launch this site because it was about exposing establishment hypocrisies, which we are very keen to do.
Well, now, WalesEye's been around for just a few weeks, but already you're making some headlines. How have you rattled the cage of this established Welsh government, for example?
Well, we've done it in a number of ways, Dennis. I mean, the very fact that we are here causes them unease, I'm pretty sure, and asking key questions such as where does this money come from? Why are we spending it on this? They don't like that. I mean, that does seem to be something that is rather uncomfortable for them. And we have also looked at the way a senior minister, a senior former minister, assembly member, went from a leading player within the assembly to become the man who was leading a science park and in charge of a science park which he himself supported. And we felt that that was an area that should be examined, and that sort of revolving door between politics and private industry, which has in London been closed because there's a 2-year cooling off period, for ministers anyway, and we felt that that should be replicated here in Wales. So although this person isn't or wasn't a minister, he was a very senior politician. So there are a number of ways in which we have already, in just a few short weeks, rattled the cages of the establishments and the politicians here in Wales.
Now, you've taken on a lot of this nation's sacred cows, but as I once said in a conference, I think it's sacred cows that often make the best burgers. Your story this week was about a seeming incestuous at worst, inappropriate at best, commissioning relationship benefiting a BBC executive's wife's own company. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, the whole tenet of investigative journalism, I think anyway, is knowing where to look and having sources for what you are saying and making sure that everything is legally safe. And in this area, for example, we did know where to look, and we had a number of sources, and we made sure that everything was run past a lawyer to ensure it was absolutely legally safe. Now, this was a case where a very senior BBC Wales executive, his wife was connected with a private company, and her company was involved in gaining TV commissions via BBC Wales, and although that her husband wasn't involved, his senior colleague was involved, and we just felt that there was an area where, when there was a potential conflict of interest, it should be taken out of the BBC altogether. We are, after all, as in all of our cases, many of our cases anyway, looking at the issue of public money and the way it is spent. And in this case, for example, we're talking about thousands of pounds of public money, and we did feel that it should be scrutinised, and in something like this, scrutinised fairly carefully and closely.
We're talking with Phil Parry. He's the founder of a new news website called WalesEye.com here on Worldview with Dennis Campbell. Phil, you've gone after the most sacred cow there is in Wales, the Welsh Rugby Union. Now, the love of rugby in this country is, some might say, obsessive. And I've never seen a country's fortunes rise and fall so much with the results of the national side. What did they do? And do you have some kind of a death wish?
Well, that's a very good question, Dennis. I mean, you're quite right. I mean, the Welsh Rugby Union are a very senior and key pillar of the establishment here in Wales. And it would have surprised a number of people, I think, to know that when the world champions in rugby union were taken on, New Zealand, were taken on by the best team in the Northern Hemisphere, i.e. Wales, that there were over 2,000 unoccupied seats in the Millennium Stadium where the match took place. And given that people around Wales and indeed Britain were scrabbling for seats, we just felt this was an extraordinary statistic and something that should be publicised. And especially as it came in the wake of the controversy about empty seats or unallocated seats in the Olympics. And we just did feel that it was something that should be publicised and put on our website. And you're quite right, it did cause unease among the Welsh Rugby Union and those in the establishment and the establishment in Wales. But frankly, as nothing, almost nothing, is off limits, frankly, from our point of view. And that is one of those areas. Rugby in Wales and the way rugby is run and money involved in it is one of those areas.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about the future of Wales Eye. Will Wales Eye also look back retrospectively at expenditures? I mean, for example, the Ryder's Cup, and I consider that to be a debacle, comes to mind. Some £51 million of public money was spent for a golf tournament. And I was just with a business leader yesterday who tried to insist that this was all well worth the cost. But at the end of the day, you know, a single person who owns a very large resort and has lots of money is trying to force through a convention centre on his property on the England side of Newport while the government wants it in Cardiff. Will you be looking into this story and others going forward?
There is no reason at all why we shouldn't, Dennis. I mean, although they are retrospective stories, the issue of the way that money and public money is spent on projects such as that is very current. And there is no reason why we shouldn't look at something like this. And one of the areas, for example, that we're looking at is the way that the BBC covered Glastonbury Festival. Why are certain festivals, such as Glastonbury, part of the crown jewels, as it's put in the way that it's covered and should be covered with thousands of pounds worth of public money and for wall-to-wall television coverage? Why is this? I mean, for example, there are a number of festivals around Wales that doesn't get a fraction of the money that is spent on something like that. So we will be looking at that. There's no reason why we shouldn't look back at such and such issues that you mentioned, like the Ryder Cup, where public money has been spent. And there is no reason why we shouldn't, if we feel we should and we have new information, look at those sorts of areas. Because the critical point is, I keep returning to it, but it is a very important one. It is all our money. I mean, the way that these things are, this money is spent, is very, very important.
Well, digging deeply and asking the tough questions is a lonely but rewarding business, but I sense it's in good hands here. Thanks for being with us today, Phil.
You're very welcome, Dennis, and thank you very much indeed for asking me.
Phil Parry is the founder and editor of the new website WalesEye.com. Now, they're an organization looking to dig deeply into abuses and inconsistencies in how public funds are spent and to whose benefit. You're watching Worldview with Dennis Campbell. Stay right here.